So I didn't sleep last night very well, despite all my gadgets that I wear to tell me how good I sleep, in anticipation of what we're going to do today, because we are going to do something a little different on today's episode, something that we haven't done before. And quite honestly, I hope we don't do ever again. We'll see how this thing goes. But today I am going to be in the hot seat. And one of my dear producers, who is fabulous, is going to do her best to not embarrass me and make me feel awkward. And she is going to interview me using questions that all of you have submitted about things that you may want to know about me. Go figure. I think I'm an open book. I don't know that I have too much to tell you, but hey, we're going to have fun with this. Things about me personally or what my passions are. And we're going to have some fun with this. So go easy on me when you're listening to this, but we're going to have fun. So I will, without further ado, I'm going to bring in my dear friend and producer, Stephanie Kaysen, so she can do her best to humiliate me. Stephanie, please go easy on me.
I will do my best, Dr. Mike. Excited to be here with you today. And we've got a lot of great questions from your listeners. But the first question is from me. I want to know how you feel about doing this episode and if you're nervous.
So I have to say, I don't know that nervous is the word. I think I've done so many odd things in my life in terms of stuff. But, the unknown is always a little nerve wracking. I like to think, when we do our podcast together every week, we have some idea of the guests and the questions and things. There's always like curveballs, right? But when it's coming at you rapid fire, I will say I'm a little apprehensive. We'll leave it at that.
Right. I like it. Well, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're willing to do this, because a lot of people want to know a lot of stuff about you. So the first question that we have for today is, why did you want to do a podcast? You're a busy guy. You do a lot of things. What was it about a podcast that made you excited?
Yeah. So, it's interesting because, the podcast world has grown tremendously over the last several years. And it never really struck me, as a thing to do. But, what it comes down to is a very simple principle, which is I love education. And now when I say education, I don't mean like standing in front of a lecture hall, with a stick to a chalkboard. I don't even know if they do that anymore, but that's what they used to do. But I love just sharing with people experiences and tips and tools. And, I will be honest, sometimes I bag a little bit on the whole, technology thing and Facebook and computers and now Zoom and there's all these things. But honestly, doing a podcast gives me that extra platform to get my voice out. I mean, it's not that I know everything, but I think after practicing medicine for, a couple decades or more, I've learned a lot. And I think we can all really share a lot of our experiences. I had lunch with a guy, a buddy of mine and colleague last week, who's working on a project. And I told him, I said, when you know this guy's personal story, I said, this is something you got to share, because I think there are a lot of people out there that may have similar stories and can learn a lot of things, perhaps about themselves or about things they can do to better their health, mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever it may be. So I think it's just yet another avenue. And like I always say, if we can change one life, hey, it's one life, and every life is precious. That's my short answer.
I just wanted to follow up. You said that you're an open book. And so how does that factor into how you approach this podcast?
It's kind of funny. I guess as you get older, as you sort of become a little bit more open. And I've always been a very kind of open person about my life, because I don't know, it's just the kind of person I am. My mom always raised me to be very interactive and social and talk to people and to just share things. And I think whether they're stories of triumph or defeat or whatever they may be, I think that being open and being vulnerable is something that I've learned as I've gotten older. And, I've been through it all. This last several years, having gone through divorce, having my mother, my dear mother die, and my sister die, all within a span of about 3 years. I mean, I really got punched in the face. So I feel like there are other people out there that get punched in the face daily and for different reasons. And I think that that's a reason why a lot of us struggle to get on track with our health. And I think if you can kind of relate to people and say, hey, I may not be going with what you're going through, but here's some of the crap I went through. And I get it. Life is hard, but it's just sort of adds sort of support and scaffolding to that idea that we all have to still keep trying. And life is not always going to be perfect. And I think for me, being an open book has just displayed some more vulnerability that I have, and hopefully it's for good, for good use.
What would you say? I'm going off script a little bit here, but what would you say is something that you've taken? You had a difficult year, as you said, with a lot of personal loss and change and transition. What is something that helped you to cope effectively with all of that in your own life?
Well, I'm going to be straight honest. I've realized that I had some good and some bad coping mechanisms. I did when I was going through a lot of it. I mean, I drank a lot alcohol, and it was not pleasant. I just didn't know what to do. I was by myself, and I think so I can relate to people who go down these bad pathways. And I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you and say, yeah, oh, I did all these perfect positive things. Cause again, I think number one, it would be a lie. Number two, that lack of transparency is not going to help anybody. I drank a lot, and, I've always enjoyed my wine, and that's just been a big passion of me, learning about wine and stuff, and we all did our thing in college or whatever it was, but I drank a little bit more than I was comfortable with. And so I think coping mechanisms can be good and bad. That was clearly a very bad one for me. On the other hand, what I did do that I've always done is I exercise like a maniac. And, I think it goes to speak to that whole idea when people go through stress or depression, or they're really just struggling in life. A lot of people go to food and lack of exercise, which can obviously cause a lot of problems in your life and your health. I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, go the opposite. I struggle to eat, and which is, again, I'm not saying that's a good idea, but, I went from I'm 6 feet tall kid, but I've always been a lanky little swimmer guy. So I went from a ripe 210 to 170 rather quickly because of stuff that I was going through. So I think for me, it was reaching out to people. But yeah, it was challenging. I think coping mechanisms is a broad category of which there are good and bad and healthy and unhealthy. But for me, I'm just happy I recognize that this is not a good thing to be doing, and tried to correct my direction.
Hmm. And thinking about that, this idea of coping mechanisms and keeping yourself well and healthy, and you've obviously dedicated your whole career to doing that. What made you, just to reflect back, what made you go into medicine, and specifically into the specialty that you chose?
So this is yet another piece of my past. To start with, I always like learning stuff. I've always enjoyed learning things that I didn't know. Now, that may be from an academic standpoint, or maybe sitting down at a bar next to some perfect stranger and listening to their story, learning about their profession or their trade or whatever it is. And I've had some great stories over the years. My girlfriend always makes fun of me because she's like, "Oh, now who did you meet?" But I find people interesting, which gets me to the second part of your question. But I've always enjoyed school. I've always enjoyed being in school, education. There's the socialness, the social element of it. There's also just the whole idea of learning stuff and creating that response in your brain. But when I was in sixth grade, I had a brother who was killed in a motorcycle accident. And I remember very vividly the day I was lying on my belly watching a Dodger game. It was a Saturday, and I remember the phone ringing. I picked up the phone. Some random guy asked for my mom. I gave the phone to my mom. She, not knowingly, said, "Oh, well, your brother Jerry got in a motorcycle accident. I told him not to buy that thing." You just don't think of the worst case scenario, at least when you're 11, right? And it was a bizarre thing because they said, "Well, we got to go to the hospital." I know that that day they were planning on going to some dance and whatever they were going to do on their Saturday night. And she went to the hospital and they were gone for hours and hours and hours. And this wasn't the day of cell phones and all of that stuff. And when she came back, my stepfather was driving the car and she was in the back seat, which I thought was odd. I remember going out and looking for them, like, where are they? And quite simply put, when I remember my stepfather getting in the car and saying, your brother didn't make it. And I didn't know what that meant. And then I proceeded to see my mom go literally into what was a year of a depression. And I quite honestly, I don't think she was ever the same person. When you lose a child, it's difficult. So I think it was the respect for life and perhaps the respect for my mother, bless her heart, and just the idea that, man, if there's something I could do with my life that may potentially prevent a problem like this or a situation like this for somebody else, I think that would be a gift, not only to myself and my soul, but to others. And that's kind of how it happened. Now, the whole family medicine thing was just because I like to talk and I love people. And when I was a kid, my idea of a doctor was like the typical, like, you went there when you were a kid, when you were older, you went for everything, right? It wasn't like so specialized as it is now. So to me, it was like, I don't know. I didn't know there was any other doctor but a family medicine guy. So I'm like, I guess this is what I do. And then, of course, my other older brother, who I followed in his footsteps, he's now been practicing. He's 8 years older than me. And yeah, we both sort of bonded, and we still do, about the, trials and tribulations of being a physician these days. But that's it. That's the story, a little collaborative.
That sounds like it was obviously a very seminal moment.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think back about it, and when you're 11, you don't really know what's going on. But when you get older and then you look back at when you were 11, it starts to make more sense. But yeah, I think it was devastating for me, and my siblings and I still talk about it, that when my mom was alive, even for the decades moving forward, she was never quite the same. And I think it goes to, there's people that lose a child. I mean, any loved one, right? Anybody in your life. But when you lose a child, it's a thing. And I watched it firsthand. And for anybody out there, I hope you never have to go through that.
So thinking about your career in medicine that has spanned decades now, what do you love about being a physician, and what's the most challenging part of being a physician, would you say?
I think what I love is that I feel like the things that I try to encourage people to do are very doable. I always say to my patients, I have all these weird things I say to them, but I always say to them, tell me what you can do, not what you can't do. And tell me what you did, not what you failed to do. The idea is that I think health and wellness has gotten a little out of, it's just gotten out of hand, right? There's like listen, as I speak, I have a Fitbit on and I have this new Aura ring that I'm wearing and all these things, right? All these gadgets, and, there's all these different modalities that we use. But at the end of the day, I love the simplicity of health, which is very simple. Respect your stress and manage it, follow good nutrition, hydrate, move. And I use the word move in place of exercise because exercise can be a intimidating term, and try to avoid smoking. Those are the 5 pillars as I've seen them. They're simple. Now, achieving the task is difficult because life gets in the way, but the basic principles I know most people can do. It's just, how do you unlock that key to their desire and passion to do it? So I love the the doability of health. I haven't quite figured out the easeability yet. But the doability, I love it. It's not like I'm saying to somebody, I need you to climb Mount Everest. Hey, I'm just saying, I need you to get out of your chair and walk around the block. So I think everybody's level of doability, whether, as it pertains to those pillars, is different. But I don't ask a lot of difficult things for my patients conceptually. They may be difficult, practically to put into place, but that's what, having that relationship with your doctor is about, is working through those things.
And what do you see as the biggest challenge? I know this is maybe a broad generalization, but thinking about your patients overall, what is the biggest challenge or biggest mistake that your patients seem to be making?
You know, so I think we're all guilty. I'm guilty of it, and I think I see it very commonly. Is I think that we fail in our ability to set goals. I think in a recent project I did, which will be out in the next several months, there's a chapter on goal setting. And the idea is that it's very easy to throw that term around, right? Just set some goals. But what does that mean? How do you do it? And how do we go about it? But I think people tend to try to change too much too soon. And I think people tend to struggle with setting goals properly. And I think it's focus on one aspect of your health. I just gave an example of the 5 pillars as I see them. And I just say, let's not try to fix all of those at once. Let's pick one that you think is the most doable, and let's start there. Nothing is more, nothing feels better to someone than when you succeed at something. And so I like people to set realistic goals. I like people to set goals in a category that they think they can really do, because when you get that first win under your belt, it's a lot easy, and I use a lot of sort of sports analogies in my books and things like that because I'm a sports nut. But it's easier when you succeed and you get a taste of success in your health, whether it's, learning to drink water or hydrate or eat better or move more, whatever it is, right? Or if you go from smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day to 1 pack, that's a win. Whatever it is, when you succeed, it feels good. And I think it gives you more fuel to succeed in the other pillars, or, to take it to a new level.
For you, do you have a goal that you've set for yourself right now in terms of your wellness?
Oh God. I got to tell you where I struggle. And those who know me most, I mean, really know me, that first tier of people in your life, I struggle with stress most. And I maybe on appearance, I walk around. There's a lot of my colleagues and friends that they, back in the days when we had meetings and we were all like in the room together.
Yep.
I forgot what that was like. They would always, there's a couple of very dear friends of mine. We've been working together more than 20 years, and they know me, and they're females because the females tend to know you better because, we're guys, we're idiots. What do we know?
I didn't say that.
Yeah, I did. But there's one particular doctor I work with. She and I started on the same day 22 years ago almost. And she used to always make fun of me because she's like, you always walk into the room and you're kissing babies and shaking hands and she's like, but I know your BS. And I used to just kind of mess with her, but she was spot on. We all put forth this sort of a appearance, and I think I tend to do that more, and I've become more vulnerable and more kind of aware of it. But I'll tell you, stress and respecting, I don't like it when people say, well, you just have to learn how to deal with stress. That's not helpful. Because look, what does that mean? It's like you just have to learn how to climb Mount Everest. I don't know why I'm going with that analogy today, but I'm sorry, but that's not helpful. I always tell my patients, you need to respect your stress. And I think that's the best word to use because it's real. There are categories of avoidability and unavoidability, but I think we focus and put too much energy and effort into stuff that's, unavoidable. And one of the analogies I tell my patients, I'm like, if you stressed out about whether it was going to rain tomorrow or be sunny, and you were stressed out, and I don't know if I'm going to go to work, and what if the roads and there's going to be traffic, I'm going to get an accident. I mean, that's a waste of time. Now, you can just say, okay, I can't control the weather. However, I can leave early to work. Maybe I can work from home. Maybe I can wear a jacket. Maybe I can wear an umbrella, use an umbrella. So I think you look at every stressful situation, and, I'm trivializing with weather, and you say, okay, what are the avoidable elements of this and the unavoidable? You respect both, but you kind of push away the unavoidable stuff because it's exactly that. It's unavoidable. And then you focus your efforts, or I have no control over this, but how can I make it a little better? So I'm trying to listen to myself and the a lot of the advice I give to others, and it's one of those things where it's easy to give advice than to follow it.
Mm.
But I struggle with that, and I think a lot of people, I think especially this past year, it's been something that weighs very heavy on people's life, but constant struggle, I will tell you.
What does it mean to you? I love this idea of respecting your stress as opposed to managing your stress. How would you like differentiate between those two ideas?
Well, I think managing tends to imply that you have complete control over it, which is that you don't. So I like the idea of separating avoidable from unavoidable. You can't manage stress. I think first you need to respect it as its presence and that entity. And then I think you separate it from the unavoidable elements, like the weather, for example. I mean, a lot of things. I have a lot of patients who this past year with stock market craziness and all this stuff, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm watching the stock market and this and that. And I'm like, well, unless you have some way of controlling the stock market, and if you do, let me know, because I'd like to invest
Like
with what you do, right? But why don't you just do the best that you can with the situation? You can't control ups and downs, but manage your portfolio or whatever you do with the information that you have, just like the weather example, just like whatever it is. So I think it frustrates me a lot when people just say, well, you just got to deal with it. No, that's not helpful. I think we need to respect stress, because I think, quite honestly, it's probably what most people struggle with in their health day to day is stress management. I don't know very many people, and it's not about having money or this or that. You can have the perfect life on paper, and stress will find you in one way or another. So I think respecting it is a better way of separating the controllable from the uncontrollable, and then focusing your efforts on the stuff that you actually have a control or impact over.
Mm.
What do I know? That's just what I came up with.
It sounded very convincing. So let's talk a little bit about something that you're very well known for, and something that a lot of the questions from your listeners were focused on. And this is your book, The 17-Day Diet.
Right.
Couple questions on that. I mean, we could do obviously a whole show, and maybe sometime we will on that, but why did you decide to write your book? And what are 5 tips from your book that you think are the most important for people to know?
So it all came about in alignment with a lot of the stuff that I was just talking about, which was I'd always had a lot of these kind of like interactions with patients, tips, things that I used to come up with, and I still use them to this day. I've been using them for years. Little tips and tricks to kind of, improve your health. And so I was fortunate enough through just a lot of the stuff that I was doing to come across some amazing people in the industry of entertainment and education. And it was really the motivating factor, which was, you should take some of these things that you do and maybe offer them up in a way that people can use them. And I think it goes back to our original question, which is, or when, the original thing we were talking about, which is, being able to enlighten people and tell them your story. It may be able to, be something they can relate to. So, 5 tips. I keep it very simple. I will tell you right now, the most important thing for anybody listening out there, if you want to do something for your health right now, today, this minute, it's to start hydrating yourself. The people that walk around dehydrated in this world, I'm guilty of it sometimes as well. It's probably 80% or more. It's amazing what just water can do. Always, for people who smoke, I tell people, always be trying to quit. Never quit trying to quit. It's a bit redundant. It on average, it takes people 8-9 attempts to quit before they can quit. So always be trying to go away from tobacco products, whatever they may be. I doubt we're ever going to wake up someday on the news and they're going to say, it turns out smoking 5 cigarettes a day is actually good for you. I doubt that's going to happen. And I say that because with alcohol, there's been a lot of studies where, a glass of wine a day is good for this. So I think always trying to work at quitting or avoiding tobacco products, hydrating, movement. Start somewhere. No matter what you do, anything you can do that's a little bit more is better than what you're currently doing. So always be trying to move. I think one of the really fun, easy tips that I use for people who want to start losing weight, I call it the rule of 2s. Minimize your carbs to 2 sources of carbs or 2 carbs before 2 p.m. Very basic. After 2 p.m., unlimited vegetables and protein of choice. Obviously sticking to leaner, nicer proteins, but it's about, I don't think avoiding carbs is the way to go. I think we all need carbs. It's a fuel source. You need the healthy ones. You need a proper amount, but you need them earlier in your day. So 2 carbs before 2 p.m., after 2 p.m., veggies and protein. Those are like 4 simple tips. And I think the last one is never quit trying. Always be trying, never give up, because I think there's so many examples of when we work so hard at things and just when you're about to give up, you have a breakthrough. So I think, you don't know where that threshold is, but always keeping, that sort of goal in mind is important. And I think if people can work on those 5 things, you can feel better, not in a year, in a week. It's really quick.
Great. So off the back of that, somebody wanted to know, what is one wellness trend that you love and one that you hate?
I will, that's a great question. I think, and I spoke of this earlier, I think what I get a little frustrated with is all the gimmicky things. And I don't know, maybe because I'm a fool for having tried so many of them. And, it's like the new shiny toy, right? So I feel like a lot of people get caught up in the lotions and potions, as I say, and the tricks. And I think it's something that frustrates me because there's a huge market for so many things out there. And I think people are desperate at times, and they're like, maybe that's going to work for me. And who knows, maybe for some people out there, it is one of these gadgets that does work for you. But sometimes I feel like they're trying to overwhelm us. And it sometimes it kind of frustrates me a little bit because I just want people to make it more simple. But one of the things that I have to say that I love is that I think there has become a lot more awareness lately about especially obesity, mental health. I think these things have been swept under the rug for a long time. I mean, when we look at the rates of obesity, they've continued to rise and rise and rise. When you look at the mental illness in our country or in the world we live in, it's a struggle. But I think that we're starting to make people more aware. And I think it's not so much a condemnation or a shaming. It's really kind of a reaching out to help people. We got a long way to go on both of those fronts, but I like that people are starting to kind of become more aware. And I think awareness will lead to strategies and ultimately to success.
How much is mental wellness a part of your life or your practice?
God, it's a huge part. I think mental wellness is 100% a part of everything. But again, we struggle with it. And no matter how strategic we are in our efforts, stuff happens. And, I just think that we all get thrown so many curveballs and life has become complicated. I mean, listen, I'm an old school guy. I'm not like 90 years old, but I'm 52. I feel like I'm 90 because I'm the kind of guy that I'm like Little House in the Prairie kind of guy, simple dog, basic stuff like the whole cell phones and all this. I mean, let me tell you, I will go back to that answering machine that blinked red when you came home and the dial cell phone or the dial phone any day, because I just feel like, I'm old school at heart on many levels.
I love that. So what's something about you that might surprise listeners?
I think, to this point, we talked it a little bit before. I think that people would tend to look at me not knowing my story. And in fact, in the project I just finished or completed, there's a lot of kind of tell all. And I think, and it's probably to my fault. We sometimes walk around with this, sort of expressing this confidence about ourselves that, quite frankly, I don't have all the time. And I may act like I do. And I've been very fortunate in my life, and I had an amazing upbringing from amazing mother and father. I've been surrounded by family and great friends. But it's sometimes when you're at home and you're by yourself and you're looking at some daunting task, you question your abilities and you sometimes lose your self-confidence. And it happens to me a lot. And those who really know me know that I'm full of shit sometimes. I may not look like it, but I am. So just know that.
I love that. I love it because before you were talking about getting more like in touch with your vulnerability and being able to like really connect to what's going on. Because for so many people, especially, not to get too gender specific, but for men, it's sometimes hard to get in touch with those more vulnerable.
Yeah. And let me tell you, I've been through all the books. I read them all and they're all helpful on some level. So guys out there listening, yeah, we got a lot of learning to do.
I love it. All right. So a few more. What is the single best thing you do for yourself each day?
I think it's hydration. I really think it's the one thing that I start my day with. I've always struggled with meditation, and I've tried 1 minute meditation, 30-second meditation. I was the kid in church, and this is a true story. I was an altar boy, and I was a kid in church that, when everyone was praying, I was kind of like looking around the church, looking at the people, da, 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 da. My mom used to get so mad at me. But I think hydration is probably the single most underrated thing that people can do. And I'm proud to say I'm really good about doing that. I still have my coffee. I still have my glass of wine with dinner, but I drink a ton of water. I start my day with water, and I'm water heavy. And I think it gives me energy. And the days that I don't, it is palpable. It is noticeable to me within 5 hours of my day. I'm like, man, I didn't drink all the water I need to. So big tip, simple thing we can do. Is hydration. I think it's the one thing I do right. The one thing.
Do you have a specific way that you do it? Like, do you have a technique for it?
So again, old school, like the idea of buying water was so foreign to me, right? Like, when did we ever think we were going to be spending money on water in a bottle, right? I still drink out of the sink. My nurses still laugh at me. I'm like, look, it's not like we're in some third world country without fresh water. It's, I like take my water bottle and I fill it in the sink. I'm like, it tastes fine. It's, there's probably a list of 10 other things that are going to kill me before this water. So my thing has always been, I buy these certain bottled waters at the store that I go to. They're cheap, right? And I keep them everywhere, which goes against my principles as being a neat freak Virgo, OCD, whatever you name it. My therapist is like, yeah, you're pretty OCD. Um, but I just make it present, out of sight, out of mind, right? If you have that bottle at your desk, in your car, not in your back seat, in your front seat, on your nightstand, it's just got to be present, because we all know it's a good idea, but we just get caught up in our day. So I think if it's in your face, knowing it's a good idea, you'll likely start to go down that path.
Great. Okay, so to end things off, we are going to do a speed round where I'm going to ask you to choose between two things, and you let us know which is true by speaking quickly, so you don't have
Okay.
time to think about it. All right. So first question: late night or early morning?
Early morning.
Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Nice. Sweet too. Classical or rock?
100% rock.
That one was easy. Okay, cat or dog?
Well, I'm an animal lover, but since I have two cats right outside my door here that are going to like scratch me if I say otherwise, cat times 2.
Okay, movie night in or date night out?
That's a tough one. I gotta say, movie night in. That's tough. As I've gotten older, I think it's migrated in that direction.
Okay, beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Nice. Are you a skier?
No, I just don't like sand.
Who
It's
knew?
messy.
Maybe that's your OCD.
It 100% is.
Okay, introvert or extrovert?
Extrovert, without a doubt.
Organized or messy?
Yeah, organized.
Yeah.
To a point where it's like almost affects my life. Oh.
That might be another podcast, exploring
yes.
OCD. Okay, freestyle or breaststroke?
Freestyle. 100%.
Right. And you're a big swimmer, yeah?
Yes. I used to do all the strokes, but freestyle is like always doable when you're injured, and as you swim more, your shoulders hurt, your hips, your back, whatever. But freestyle is always doable.
Oh, yeah, that's in line with your old school, right?
Right, exactly.
Keeping it simple. Okay, so in honor of James Lipton, who I love, what is your favorite curse word?
This is a great question. And what a career that guy had, right? I mean, amazing. Rest in peace. Really amazing. And I'm not going to say that I don't curse, because I definitely do. But I love the versatility of the word ass. I love ass because it's such a usable word. It's almost not offending. It's almost not really a cuss word. I even oftentimes will say, yeah, I was a complete ass. And there's sort of a softness to it. Or you can even say it in an aggressive manner, and it can be really have an impact. So I love the versatility of that word ass. And it's, another word for donkey. So you can always get away with, saying that word.
G-rated. So what would your, if you were going to use it aggressively towards me, I just want to hear what that sounds like. What does that sound like?
It's hard because I like you so much. So it's hard to say, but I would say, Stephanie, you are a complete ass.
And by the way, it's kind of funny. It works. You're right.
It has like a very sort of softness to it, but it's all in the tone, right? All in the delivery. But I oftentimes say that about myself. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. What an ass I am, jokingly. And you can almost get away with that word in church. I feel, I feel like the priest would be like, yeah, all right, I'll let you slide with that. Others, not so much, but I have my choice words. Let me tell you.
All right. Well, that is it for me and for this episode. So thank you. I just want to reflect back that for me, one of the reasons why I'm so excited about working with you and about this podcast is you have so much good information, good experience, amazing education. All of that is for granted. But you keep it real, and you don't sit in your throne and dispense advice for the rest of us. You're like a real human being, and you share honestly about your own experience, and I feel like that's really meaningful. So.
It means a lot coming from you, and I appreciate that. And I think we can all learn from ourselves if we give ourselves a chance. I'm still learning. I got a lot to learn, but
Thank
thank
you.
you. Well, that was fun. I told you something a little different today. I hope that gave you a chance to get to know me a little bit better. I'm really passionate about this podcast, and I love every guest. My only thing is, I wish I could spend longer with these people because they're fascinating, and I think we all have something to learn from everybody out there, whether they're on my show or not. But I'm so grateful to all of you guys for just tuning in and listening each week. And maybe some weeks are better or more practical for you than others, but as we go on this health and wellness journey together, I appreciate, just please know I appreciate your trust and presence. So thank you. And of course, with each episode, I give you my weekly RX. And even though today's format was a little different, I still want to leave you with some tangible nuggets, some takeaways. So as I say every week now, for today's RX. So it's interesting because I'm going to give an RX about stuff that I said, but I will say this, and I think it's really important, which is vulnerability can be a very healing tool. And I think being vulnerable with yourself and with others can really give you some insights. I think another tip is to never stop trying. I've learned and I've seen so many success stories over the years, personal and professionally, but you never know when your day is going to be your breakthrough day. And always trying is so important. And lastly, don't be hard on yourself, because I say this all the time to people, sometimes jokingly, but I really mean this sincerely. Life is hard. It is so hard. And we never know what's going to come our way. We look back at this past year and the pandemic, and I mean, we all default to that, but forget the pandemic. Life is hard every day for everybody for different reasons. And I think recognizing that and not being hard on yourself is equally as important, pandemic or not. That's it. Take care. And as always, don't forget to subscribe for free download and listen to Wellness Inc. with me, Dr. Mike Moreno, on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. And follow me on social at the 17 Day Diet.